Imagine draining your hard-earned retirement savings just because the mainstream media told you it's the smart move. Sacrificing financial security for a pension gimmick. And by the time you realize the truth, it's too late. Today I'm calling out this outrageous, laughable advice and breaking it down piece by piece and showing you what the real numbers behind a successful retirement should look like. Welcome back to another episode of the Finance Bible podcast. You're joined with myself, Zeke,
and your co-host, Oscar. But before we get into it, please note that nothing in this podcast should ever be considered as personal financial advice.
But if that is what you are seeking, get in touch, let us know, and we will hook you up with the correct professionals.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Let's get into it. Welcome to the first episode of just me, running amok, doing what I do. We'll jump straight into it. I've been seeing a lot in the media lately about the pension increase. Everywhere I look, you got the same claims popping up left, right, and centre about how to maximise your pension by reducing your assets. It's rubbish. Simply put, outlandish, foolish, idiotic, rubbish. Media outlets are encouraging you to spend your retirement savings, dropping them down to, 400,000 so you can qualify for the full pension. And it's positioned as this magical, mythical strategy. But when you break it down, it's just simply another gimmick, and it's as easy as that. This episode, we're going to be talking about cutting through the noise, breaking down the numbers behind the claim, explaining why it's wrong, and showing you how real wealth is built and maintained. That's probably the main part. Remember this. Don't believe everything you see, hear, or read, even from myself. Do your own research and always check the facts. If you hear something from me, it's probably right, but go and research it. Check it yourself. Make sure it is right. If you hear something in the media, go check it. Simple. What are they actually claiming, these media geese? They're claiming if you have $400,000 in your super fund, you can live a better life than millionaires simply by claiming full age pension with modest super drawdowns. Realistically, if you've got $1 million in super, they're saying you won't live as good as someone with 400k because they can claim the pension and increase their overall income to more than what you can as a millionaire. By millionaire, we're talking this specific example, $1 million in superannuation. So apparently, and I mean, this is written, it's not me making it up. Apparently, the ideal strategy, we'll call it, is to spend your way down to a magical amount of $400,000 in your super fund. Because why would you want 1 million in super when you could have less? Common sense, right? Why would you have 1 million when you can just spend 600k and have 400k and do better than a millionaire? Well, I don't know. So we'll break that down. And we're going to go through all the numbers eventually. We're going to go through everything, but I just want to give some context. First of all, today we're going to be talking about couples in particular, because that's what I've done the numbers on, but it does work a similar concept. Spoiler alert, the math is the same no matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing. It's slightly different for singles, but the concept is the same. Let's break down the claim. So the full pension for a couple, okay, the full pension, they're under the thresholds, is $44,855 per year. We're just going to call it 45k, give or take. What they're saying is, if you get that full pension, you have 400k in super, then you can live off about 73k per year. And the $28,000 difference there between the 44 and the 73 is from your super, and they assume that you achieve a 7% return in your super fund, okay? But you're drawing down 28,000 of it per year to fund your retirement and get you up to $73,000 per year income. They assume a consistent 7% growth annually, which isn't out of the ordinary. That's pretty standard, 7, 8, 9%. So that is fine. They don't take into account anything to do with dividends, which is a problem because dividends are, in Australia, an average of about 3.5%, which is great for income. But again, that only works if you've got enough principal to generate a decent amount of returns, right? Because 3.5% on 400k is bugger all. 3.5% on a million is 35k. So 400k won't cut it for the long haul because it's not generating enough to keep building up, but we'll get onto that later as well. Another issue with the pension is basically it comes in at 67. So if you are floating around 60 years old, you want to retire, then this strategy doesn't work for you anyway because you're going to be 7 years without the pension. So how do you live? You don't. The next thing to talk about is how reckless it is to spend your money down. If you've got a million, they're practically inferring, okay, go ahead, spend 600k and drop your super down to 400,000. So just get rid of that 600,000. Why would you keep it? Common sense. It's a magical, mystical land we live in where you just get unlimited money and rely on the pension and you're going to be better off than someone with $1 million. No, common sense applies. In fact, even just suggesting this in an article on Facebook is outlandish, reckless, and it can cause a lot of problems. What they're saying is get rid of the safety net so you can rely on the government. That's virtually like saying, oh, why don't you quit your job tomorrow and rely on the dole on Centrelink? Spending your savings to qualify for a pension leaves you with less flexibility, no buffer for unexpected expenses, and no control over your future. What about holidays? What about medical expenses? What about if something goes wrong? Why would you want to rely on the government and not have a safety net at all? So that's just another thing to bring up. Inflation's also a risk. If grocery prices go up, it's a silent killer. Your purchasing power goes down. You can't buy as much things. Whereas if you've got money invested, then it goes up with inflation. What the media wants you to believe is that financial security comes from spending all of your money. But here's the truth. Poverty isn't a strategy, and dependency is not freedom. What do we actually need to do and break this down properly? Okay, we'll jump on into it. So the real numbers, and we need to talk about compound growth and dividends a bit further to get into the real numbers, but compound growth works in a way where if your super grows at 7%, it doubles roughly every 10 years. So if you have 1 million at 60, you're looking at around 4.7 by the time you're 90. That's the power of compounding. There is a compound interest calculator. If you go on like moneysmart.com.au, then, actually it's moneysmart.gov.au, I think, because it's government. But if you go on that website, you can put in calculations and figure things out for yourself. It's pretty easy. And dividends come in at about 3.5% dividend yield. So 1 million will generate you 35k per year. And then your compounding growth, 1 million would generate you about 70,000 per year. That is a fair breakdown on the actual numbers and getting a bit of an understanding before we dive into the actual claims and how they work. So the theory behind the article is, and there's 3 different scenarios. Scenario 1 is the article. Scenario 2 is me, and scenario 3 is me. Number 2 is we're going to rely on dividends only. And number 3 is we're going to use some dividends and some growth. We'll come back and explain them. So the pension strategy. Number 1, the magical strategy. The government strategy, the media strategy, whatever you want to call it, the idiot strategy. They say get down to 400k super and rely on the pension and draw income from your super as well. So year 1, you've got 400k, you get that 44k pension, and then you get 28k give or take from your super. So you draw down the growth on it and a bit more as well. So year 1, you have 400k and you draw about, we'll just round it up, we'll call it $73,000 in the year to live on. Now that's fine. You can do that for the rest of your life until you're 90 if you really want, if you only want 72 grand per year. And when you hit 90, you end up with about $300,000 left. So it's not a huge problem, right? If you want to live on 72 grand as a couple. But if you've got more house repayments, if you've got any form of holidays you want to do, any medical expenses that come up that you need to pay, then your super balance is going to dwindle pretty quick and you'll run out of money in your super. And then you're just relying on the pension, which is that 44, 45 grand that we're talking about. So what would happen then in the event that you are a couple that's used to a bit higher level income? Let's say 100,000. Well, year 1, you need to draw down an extra 28,000, so 56 from your super. getting you up to that total of 100 grand because you got 45 from pension, 55, 56 from super. Okay. Then your balance drops to about 350k. Year 2, it drops to 300. Year 3, it drops to 250, and so on. It gets lower and lower. You run out of super, and before it's been 5, 6, 7 years, you're relying on that 44, 45k from the pension. Pointless. You're done. You're out of money. Game over. So that strategy is terrible. It's dumb. It's outrageous. The fact that they would even say spend 600 grand, go on a spree, and dwindle your savings to qualify for the pension is just one of the most outlandish claims I've ever read in my life, and I've read some stuff. So, what are the other two scenarios, and what are the better ways to do it? And this will depend on you and your spending, and it's not financial advice, but if we just move on to scenario number 2, which is dividend only. So, this is when we live purely on the dividends. If we've got that 1 million and it's growing at 7% per year, then it gets to about 1.07 mil at the end of year 1, and it will pay you 35 grand in dividends. So you live on that 35 grand in that instance. It's important to note here that this can start at age 60 because you're not relying on the pension anymore. Year 3, we'll just fast forward a few years so I can provide numbers and make sure that you guys are understanding the numbers behind it. So it continues to grow at 7% per year. At the end of year 3, you've got about 1.2, 1.25 million. And your dividends now, your 3.5% on that, is about 40,000. So still not a huge amount. Year 5, it goes up a little bit more. Fast forward to year 10, you've got about 2 million in there. And you're getting about 64,000 worth of dividends per year. That's a bit of a better number, but it's still not really where you need to be or want to be. If we fast forward to 23 years, which is age 90, assuming you start at 67, then you've got about 4.7 million, which pays you about 150k per year. So there's a very big jump because compounding, the more it goes on, the better it gets, right? If you get to that point, you've got 4.7 mil left and you've got 155k per year coming in. So you can figure out as you go, do you want to draw down more? Do you want to draw down less? What do you want to leave for your children? And that's one of the main things with this strategy is this is more of a setting up your children kind of strategy, or if you don't have a large expense. So with strategy 1, the pension strategy, one of the biggest problems is if you want to create a legacy or leave something for your children, you've got nothing at the end. It's game over. With this scenario, you've got 4.5, 4.7 million remaining that you can pass on. Here is where the fun begins. Scenario 3, which is dividends and growth. If you take 3% of the growth out of your super fund and you leave it growing by 4% per year. So you've got the 7% it grows, you take 3 of it and live on that and live on the dividend. So it's only growing at 4% now. So it only goes up to 1.04 million at the end of year 1, but it can pay you 65k in income that year. If you move on to year 3, then it's only worth 1.12 million, which is like 110 grand less than the scenario 2 because you're taking that growth out, remember? It's worth 1.12 mil, but it can pay you 70 grand a year at that point, which is very similar to what the pension strategy pays and close to double what the dividend strategy pays. You then move on to year 5. It's at 1.22 million. It's paying you 76k. Move on to year 10. It's about 1.5 million, pays you 90k. And then year 23 is where you get a lot of fun happening. It's now 2.5 million, nearly, and it's paying you 154k per year. So that strategy, you get more income quicker. Within a couple of years, you're on the same amount as the pension strategy, so the pension plus super, but you're on dividends and growth. You're not actually drawing your super down, your super's still going up. And you've still got 1.2 million in there. You hit the age 90 if you retire at 67, and you've got 2.4 million paying you 154k a year. So your income's really good, and you've still got 2.4 mil left for whoever's nearby if you pass away. So your family, your children, whatever, whoever your beneficiary is. So just to break it down again, strategy 1, pension strategy, the magical myth. You've got a low amount of money as a base, but you get a decent amount of income. You get 72 grand a year until you run out. You start off on 72 grand a year, but there's a potential that you end up on 44k per year with no money left. Scenario 2, which is dividends only, you start off with a decent base, 1 million, but you're only getting 35k of income per year. But then you end up with a base of nearly 5 million, getting an income of 150k per year. So your kids get a lot. Scenario 3, which is dividends and growth, but you allow it to still grow. You start off with 1 million, you're getting 65k per year for the first couple of years. And within 3.5 years, you've overtaken the income level on the pension strategy. And you finish in 23 years with nearly 2.5 million and 154k income per year, as opposed to the 44k with no sum. Here's the truth. Spending your way to 400k from 1 million, spending 600,000 gets you 72k per year and no security. Whereas if you grow the million to 4.7 million, it gets you 155k a year and complete freedom. Which one sounds better to you? Common sense, right? Just to summarize, the pension strategy isn't security, it's dependence. Real wealth comes from growth and independence and common sense. Always question what you hear and make decisions based on numbers, not gimmicks. Moving forward, everything you see in the media about finance, about share prices, about superannuation, when you see a clip that says, oh, this is how much the average couple in Australia needs to retire on a comfortable income, or whatever the nonsense is, it's absolute statistical garbage. It shouldn't be read, it shouldn't be listened to, it should be completely ignored. And the fact that they can even put it up is absolutely baffling and mind-boggling. So ignore it, do your own numbers, research everything, contact professionals, do what you need to do to make sure that you understand and take the right steps. Because if you read that and you go and spend your 600k to try and get this magical strategy, that 600k is gone, you're not getting it back, and then you're going to run out of money, and it's going to be terrible. If this episode opened your eyes, share it with your friends, your family, put an end to bad financial advice, put an end to the media manipulating people into running out of money. And remember, again, don't believe everything you hear, even from me. Do your research, plan wisely, and take control of your financial future. Dale. As always, we hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, you know exactly what needs to be done.
Hit that follow button, subscribe, share it to friends, family, or even your co-workers, as sharing this podcast helps not just us, but everyone in the world to learn about their finances.
Thank you, Dale.